If you haven't taken any new HR classes in the last year, you may not be aware of something that could really cost your office a lot of money. How are you aware of the new thing that can get you shut down? Labor laws are just a mess. You are going to be trusting the guts of the practice to this person. Maybe you haven't had a manager, and so you're promoting your star employee to become the first manager that you've ever had. Let's talk about some of the mistakes that I've seen when it comes to hiring a manager. I wanted to share some thoughts on a very common request that I'm getting in my email, which is, hey, I need to hire a manager. So it got me to start thinking because I know that there are a lot of great managers out there. I know that there's also a lot of people out there that I've run into that really shouldn't be managers. And I'm not trying to be disparaging here, but some people just aren't cut out to be a manager. There's a lot of skills, soft skills, knowledge skills that come with that job description. But let's take it from a hiring manager point of view. As a dentist, as a business owner, maybe you're hiring somebody to be your replacement as a manager. So, what is it that I think you could maybe do a little bit wrong if you did take on this task? So, when you hook into somebody who's really great and you feel it, it's hard to argue with that, right? I hope that you're nothing but blessed with that type of hiring decision where the person walks in and you know for sure that is the kind of person that you want in your office. That's the kind of person that you want to spend a lot of time with because you will be spending a lot of time with that particular person. Make no doubt about it. So another aspect of this is this somebody that you will be able to trust your office with? Now, that is something that I think a lot of people do not really pay attention to, is that you are going to be trusting the guts of the practice to this person, right? So, and also the livelihood of the other people in your practice, the existing employees. Now, this person is going to have a huge part in whether or not they succeed in their own financial goals because the health of your practice is going to depend on you and this person. So, all that being said, I hope that you have nothing but great feelings about people that you interview. But let's talk about some of the mistakes that I've seen when it comes to hiring a manager. And I'll tell you what, the very first mistake that I see, and this is a big mistake that I think we can apply across the board though, but ignoring your gut feeling. So I've been in the middle of hiring, but I've helped a lot of dentists hire. And the one thing that I will hear back from them afterwards is, there was just something. I should have listened to myself. I should have just paid attention to that feeling. I just had a feeling something was off. So when you're newer in your career, you start to think, okay, I'm second guessing myself here. Maybe I'm just faking myself out. And that's normal. But I want to urge you to maybe give that a little bit more weight, because a lot of times that gut feeling is your own body, your mind telling you something's off here. And we have to pay attention to that in almost every setting, whether it's our own personal safety or our mental safety. If you think about it, having to work with somebody that may give you a harsh vibe after a while. So think about that. If they're already giving you a vibe and it's not a great vibe, then we definitely need to really trust our gut when it comes with that. As a new manager, I really had a hard time trusting myself in the very beginning because I tend to think that maybe I'm being a little overly critical. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, right? So I start to get a little bit more critical, and I didn't listen to myself, and I should have. Like, that's actually when I should have listened to myself. So that's the big overarching piece of advice I want to give you. But let's break it down a little bit more into how you could kind of mess up when it comes to hiring a manager. So one thing that I see a lot is promoting one of your star employees to be the manager. Maybe it's not even the person who's been there the longest, although that's typically what happens. They've been there the longest because, you've worked with them the longest, you like working with them the longest. In many situations, though, it's not because that longevity is deserved or earned. It just has happened. Maybe they're, like Survivor, if you think about on the island, maybe they're just the person that's been able to stay on the island longer than most people. A star employee is a star employee now because of the role that he or she is in. But if you move that star employee into a role that they're not fit for, even though they'll want to do it, because the one thing about star people, star employees in any role, is that they want to take on new challenges. They want to be able to please whomever their manager is and then, keep going up the scale. They want new things to do, new projects. And that's amazing, right? You really want that in a person. However, that eagerness to say no and excel could lead them to take the job, even though they're not really a fit for the position. And that's a dangerous situation to be in, because that always results in just bad feelings, because the owner dentist is going to think, you're so good at this, why couldn't you just do this? Those skills don't necessarily transfer, right? But as a star employee, being given a position that they almost feel like they're set up to fail, that's a huge hit to their psyche too. But also, it starts to lead to them underperforming and really feeling bad about it. And you might actually see them leave because they feel like they can't hack it, or they feel embarrassed that they can't hack it, right? So that's always a bad situation. There's usually a mismatch in that situation. There's a mismatch between their skill level and what you actually expect for the person that's going to be taking this job. Now, I'm going to go into exactly how you should set your expectations in just a second, but seeing another office manager do the job is not the same thing as being trained to do the job. And a lot of times your star employee is somebody that's worked alongside your current manager, and perhaps they've been observing some bad habits, or perhaps they don't have enough knowledge to bring a new, fresh way of looking at things. The other side of that is maybe you haven't had a manager, and so you're promoting your star employee to become the first manager that you've ever had. Well, that's risky as well. Just because they were a great receptionist does not mean that they're going to be great at running the office. And for some reason, that seems to be the trajectory, right? So it seems to be that the receptionist is going to be the manager. And I feel like it's because, coming from an admin person, like, we have the time to kind of research and pay attention to all this stuff because the clinical team is always on the go, going back and forth between patients. So I think in the mind of a dentist, the person that has the most time to spend on problems would be somebody who would be good at that. It wouldn't be a clinical person because they've got a lot of stuff going on. But that receptionist, just because they don't have a job that requires them to be on roller skates, that doesn't mean that they're qualified to be a manager. So it's definitely a matter of you also deciding what you want from the role of the manager. And so let's get into that here. One of the things that I see often is that the manager is elevated, maybe even just hired, but elevated usually. And the role is, here's what you used to do, and here's what we want you to do. But there's really no compromise between the two. So ideally, if you're going to take a new position, some of the stuff that you used to do needs to come off the table, because how are you going to have the time to do two full-time jobs? And I feel like this happens a lot in situations where they're unexpectedly without a manager. And so everybody's hustling and trying to fit that in. Well, somebody who's a star performer is going to excel at taking on those two jobs initially, but then there's going to be burnout, right? Because in crisis mode, star employees do rise to the top. I get that. But you can't sustain that. Like, that can't happen for a long time, because that's just going to burn out that person. And if they start to feel like they're never going to get any help, meaning they're never going to get somebody to be a receptionist alongside them, or if there's a hiring freeze, or we're not making enough to hire another person, well, then it starts to feel like this promotion was actually not a promotion. It was actually more of a punishment, because now this person is working even harder than they used to. So let's keep that in mind, to not do that, not just to take one set of job descriptions and merge them together and say, well, you're so good at this, let's just have you do all of it. It's not really a good thing to do. The real mistake really is that we don't have a job description that's suited for what you want from a manager. And so what do you want from the manager? Well, this is what I hear most of the time. I need my manager to be able to take care of the team members, any HR issues that come up. I need them to make sure that I'm staying compliant. I need them to make sure that we're having meetings. I need them to make sure that we're looking at our numbers and that we're staying on track. And then if there's any issues with the building or with the practice and supplies and with repairs, they're going to be able to take care of that as well. So really, if you break it down, The doctor is looking for a magic wand in a person. So basically a walking stick, right? A magic wand that they can just take care of everything. And to be fair, a lot of office managers out there I know that can do this and they do it pretty well, but again, it's not sustainable. When I was an office manager, I definitely felt like I did a great job balancing everything. But then I remember thinking, this is kind of nutty. Like my work balance is not great. I mean, there was a lot of things going on there, but was I good at the job and did I get things done? And if there was an emergency that popped up, did I handle it? Yeah, for sure, for sure. But when you operate at that high speed all the time, you don't give yourself permission to take a step back and learn new things. And training is something we're going to talk about. A good office manager is not just going through the motions because this is something that they've done all the time. Management is changing. Our compliance and rules in dentistry are changing. If you haven't taken any new HR classes in the last year, you may not be aware of something that could really cost your office a lot of money. Many of you have taken my live classes. My manager class, I say the first thing that I always take care of if I'm coming into an office, when I was a manager, when I was a consultant, is I would pay attention to the things that get me fined and the things that could get me shut down. But if you're not taking classes and you're not reading newsletters and you're not going to meetings, how are you aware of the new thing that can get you shut down? Labor laws are just a mess. I mean, I honestly, that was the least favorite part of being a manager, was managing employees and then keeping on top of labor laws and making sure that we were compliant. Go back to my episode with Alan Twigg from Bent Erickson and look at all of the things we discussed there that an office manager, if they weren't taking training, they would not know. The whole difference in pay rate. Many office managers, the majority of office managers, have never heard of that as a labor law, right? So it's definitely not something that we just learn from sitting there at the desk. We've actually got to go out and seek out the knowledge and seek out new styles of leadership, new ways of having communication with our team members. Would you like to hear more? Follow the link for the full episode.